Hey guys, it's M, and today I really want to talk about Beyond Hanwell. This is a game that I had seen just by scrolling the store, and I thought it looked really interesting. I thought the world looked nice. I thought the combat was going to be like Condemned Criminal Origins, and I was in a splurging mood, to be honest. I got this game, I got Welcome to Basingstoke, and I got Content Warning. But I imagine this was going to be the big single player one that holds me over. And upon playing this game, we went through some interesting patches, and I want to talk about that. First, let's start off with the combat and animations. When I saw the combat in the trailer, I thought of Condemned Criminal Origins. That's the vibe it was giving. That they swing at you, you block them, and then you just start whacking them back. Like, you hit the parry, whack, 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 parry, whack, 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 and then there's guns, again, kind of like how Condemned was. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. I think that's interesting. And then you get the game, and it does not really work like that. I think the combat is by far the worst part of this game. When you swing, the enemies sometimes just don't flinch. Sometimes they'll hit you in the middle of you hitting them. The animations are really janky. Sometimes enemies will full on just lunge at you, and then they'll keep doing it to keep closing the gap, and the animation just kind of cuts at the end. It's not great. I think it could have used a few more patches. I don't think the dev is doing anything else with this game. I believe this was a solo dev, so I can't be too hard on him. However, if anyone played this game, like a normal person bought this game and then saw the combat, they would probably go, oh, this is not going to be a good game. And initially, I'm not going to lie to you, I thought the same thing. The combat immediately let me down so bad, I was like, oh no, I wasted 30 bucks. Oh god, it's interesting. I feel like even seeing it, you can kind of go, that's not great. Is there anything else I need to say on it? I mean, the 1, 2, 3 block, 1, 2, 3 block, that's mainly what you're going to be doing here. The combat is not like a big staying point. Even when you get the guns more so serve to end the combat faster. Like, oh no, I'm getting overwhelmed, let me use this gun really quick, because the ammo is meant to be limited, which is also a very interesting point that I'm going to write down right now into my notes, because some of the materials here, as we're going to get into, are a bit crazy with how much they give to you. But yes, guns are meant to be like this super strong limited thing. They only give you the pistol. You have to go find the shotgun, and they just kind of end fights for you, at least on normal. On higher difficulties, they might be kind of mandatory. But yeah, the combat here is not a big sticking point. When I upped the difficulty and they said, yeah man, you know, if you up the difficulty, it makes the enemy stronger and the combat harder. This is not the kind of game where you'd want to play it for the combat. So I don't see a ton of people going like, yes, after beating this game, I want to play it on the hardest difficulty possible. Honestly, I don't think literally impossible, which is the highest difficulty here. I don't know if it's possible. I haven't seen anyone finish it. Not that I've been looking, but I can't imagine it's a very fun time. Let me put it like that. Now we got to get on to more of the positives. The graphics and no HUD choice. This is a very good looking game. And my friend saw me playing it, and he read over the store page, and he's like, yeah, you know, they chose to have no HUD and it helps immerse you into the world. And initially, I think I was so let down with the combat at the start of the game that I didn't really think about it. But the further I played the game, the no HUD thing really works here. The world is pretty big, but it's not big enough where you're just going to get straight up lost. The map is really good here, and the areas are linear enough when you're in them that you're not going to be, oh my gosh, where's my mini map? So it leads to a lot of times you can just take in how these locations were put together. There's some weird bits, like I've definitely seen some lamps and light posts just off the wall or floating off the ground. But for the most part, I would say this looks really good, especially for a solo dev game. I don't really know what else to say. This is the kind of game where you don't really need a photo mode. You could take a picture from any point of the game and it would just look good. It is a good looking game. Again, some of the animations are janky, sure. Some of them happen a little too fast, some happen a little too slow. But when you're walking around this location, Westminster, I want to say that's where it takes place. It's a good looking game. When they have horrifying areas, they match the part. When they have empty, desolate looking areas, like you're along the streets of London in the open world, because this game has an open world, which we're going to talk about, it really does give the feel of this is like not great London right now. Things have clearly gone wrong. It's a world where the moment you start exploring it, you're going to have questions, and the game usually has answers for those questions, I'd like to say. And that's a pretty good trait to have. The story and world, yes. The world in this game is so interesting to me because have you ever seen a zombie movie where it's like, oh, the zombies are expected and are part of everyday life? I think Dead Rising does that, right? Where it's like, yes, we know what zombies are, they exist in this world, so on and so forth. This game is kind of like that, where monsters are just accepted in society. There's a theme park you can go to themed around monsters, and there's a brothel you can go to that's themed around monsters, and it's so interesting. More so the brothel. I think the brothel was kind of what got me interested in the game's world, as crazy as that sounds out of context. But they're like, yeah man, some people want to have experiences with these monsters, and there's like a mimic enemy, and it's like this big ass spider, and they're like, if you get someone's DNA, we can give it to the spider and it can turn into them. There's like a witch, which is like this teleporting enemy, and they're like, we've managed to drug them so they can't use their powers. Like, it's really messed up, but it's a very interesting thing I haven't seen in a ton of fictional worlds, so I think it's really cool. It's clear that all of this society kind of worked around the fact that these things existed. Let alone, we got to talk about the other elements of the story, like the major characters. It has 4 main figureheads that you're looking for, and all of them I think are really interesting. And then there's a 5th main character that you end up kind of fighting. And then there's the doctor, who is, I don't think he's super well looked into, at least from what I've read. But the 4 main characters, they're all like, oh, we're going to help Westminster in any way we can, and they all have very different ways of doing it. The end of the game breaks down each of their philosophies for how they want to move forward protecting Westminster, and I think it's a super interesting thing, but I only want to get into like maybe like 2 or 3 out of the 4, and then maybe the director, who is the 5th guy. The doctor was really interesting because things were going bad in Westminster, and he has a ton of patients, and he has so many patients he doesn't have enough food for them, and then his patients are dying because they're in such bad health. And he goes, maybe this isn't all bad, maybe one of these problems solves the other one. So he like resorted to cannibalism in order to feed all of his patients because he didn't have any other way to do it, which I think is super interesting. There's the head of the church, like the pastor or whatever. He's like, Westminster doesn't have order, we have to go back to our old ways, and he tries to revive like an old monarch that ran the society, but they couldn't get him right. And when you get there, you find out the thing that he revived, it's like a monster. Even the notes they go, he resembles more of like a hippo than who our king used to be. And it's just super fucked up, to be honest, that they probably just grave dug this dude who's been dead for centuries, and then he comes back and he's like just a blobby mutant mess. Then we have to talk about the director. And the director is like the boss of all the 4 figureheads that you've run into over the course of the game. And I think he's a super interesting character because when you get to the final section of the game, he ends up explaining, he's like, I understand where all of these guys are coming from, but however, they have a giant flaw in their plans that just really wouldn't work out. And he comes to the conclusion that we're all talking about how to save Westminster, how to get to this realm of the worthy, which I'm not fully going to dive into that topic because I don't fully understand it myself. And he's like, basically, all of this needs to go. Handwell, Westminster, all of its old leadership, everything has got to go. But it has to be to someone worthy. So that's why when you meet him, he's like, well, do it. Kill me. It's a super interesting premise to go, hey, this one leader guy is alive the whole time. The only other person you run into that's alive when you find them is the artist lady. She did like theater plays and stuff. Everyone else is already dead by the time that you get there. And it's interesting to think that he probably could have helped these guys like while you have been gallivanting around, but he just didn't because he was like, you guys are kind of fucking up, honestly. Enemy designs. This game has some really interesting enemy designs. I mean, as I said, there's the Mimic, which is a spider in this game. He pretends to be boxes and things, but again, given what they did with the brothel scene where they're like, give it some DNA and it can turn into anyone, I think that's cool. A lot of the creatures here just look freaky and nasty, and then they take some interesting turns. And I don't mean that in a bad way, despite how I did that slow, way of saying it. Most of the enemies you're gonna run into would fit into like Resident Evil or something, like zombies, right? And then you go into the Anomaly theme park, and they have these little fucking Five Nights at Freddy's, Poppy Playtime mascot robots around. And it was really interesting to see the difference between all the other enemies you've been fighting to these little robot guys. And then you fight this mangled monster dude. I want to say his name is Tricky or something. And he just looks like he looks like he would be a creepypasta in the 2010s, to be honest. We have puppets that you run into. There's a side character called the Duke, and he's like, oh no, these puppets, they don't control me, but people don't know. And he's gone crazy, and you fight these puppets. They don't appear in the rest of the game, kind of like the animatronics I was just talking about. They don't appear for the rest of the game. They're limited to specific areas, and there's just a lot of cool little concepts like that. When you fight the theater lady, her enemies are like mannequins. They do show up in a few places across the game, but they're mainly there. And she's like, I need you guys to move lifelike, to be real, to make this a true artistic vision. Like, all of the enemies have reasons that they're there, and I just think that's a really cool detail. I guess we could talk about the bosses in here, because I don't really have a boss point, and I can't imagine I have a ton to say on them. The bosses here I think are interesting from a design standpoint, but not a combat standpoint. Again, as I said, the combat is not very good here, so a lot of the bosses boil down to block, swing, swing, block, block, swing, swing, block. Some have very gaping flaws, like the mech guy I mentioned with the armaments dude. His weakness is fire. Every time you set him on fire, he has to run away, and then he'll explode, and then he comes back to fight you. There are multiple weapons you can get that do fire damage. There's multiple weapons and tools, I should say. So while in the fight itself, they plan for you to shoot a pipe and set him on fire, you can just hit him and set him on fire, and he's stuck in like an infinite loop. I had him once just like TOD me, like he just ran up and I died in 3 seconds. Stuff like that. The king boss, I mean, not a ton to say with him. They're really bullet spongy. That's a good point I should mention. I don't think the enemies on normal are very bullet spongy, but the bosses are. The bosses, you'll be just straight mag dumping them, and they're like, and then they just suddenly die. They just don't have very good hit registration, I should say. So that kind of stinks. Again, like I said, this is not a game you're playing for its difficulty. I think this is a game you would play for literally everything else. It's kind of like how I keep saying with Monster Hunter World, like this is a game that has a lot of good things in it, but the core combat for that game was not there. That's kind of the same case here, but I don't mind it as much in this game, right? Because I think this game did a lot unique that I haven't really seen in a ton of other places. Then we got to talk about the crafting system. I think the crafting system is without a doubt the funnest part of the game. You get a lot of materials, and I think the way that they disperse the materials in there set up around the map is kind of messed up. Like I was touching on a little bit earlier with the bullet point. Sometimes you get a lot of stuff, and sometimes you don't get enough of certain things. For instance, there's like scrap, adhesive, explosives, components, all these little crafting materials. I ended up with no scrap or adhesive, and most things you want to craft in this game requires both of those things. So there were a lot of times I was running around with like 20 explosive and components, and I couldn't do anything with them because I didn't have scrap, and the game would not really give me a ton to play around with. The bullets point, I think it's interesting that they're like, yeah, this is a game where you have to manage your resources and be really tactical. I don't really feel that way. I mean, at least on normal, you can kind of just whack everything and you'll be fine. Even on hard, because I did do a hard playthrough. I beat this game twice. I have the platinum for it. It was kind of like bullets here, 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 here. Like you don't really feel the need to conserve a ton of stuff, which I think is a little bit of a problem, except for scrap and adhesive, because they give you basically none of that. Anyway, the main thing I was getting on with this crafting thing is there's a ton of fun things to craft here. They have explosives, they have unique melee weapons, one of which is the best one in the game, and the flaming mace thing, right? They have shock bombs, they have tripwires, they have, after you beat the puppet boss, you can make little puppets that fight for you, and they like curse out the enemies, and they're awesome, and I love them. There's a lot of fun stuff like that that you can make in this game, and I think the crafting system is what made me start going, okay, I can look past the combat not being great, because there's some other things going on here. I just think this is the most fun, but like it's one thing to go swing, swing, shoot, shoot, swing, swing. It's one thing to do that, but the second you go, oh, do you want to summon a little puppet that curses out enemies and can beat them up for you, or like you throw a colorful thing of dynamite and it blows up a chunk of enemies, like it's different. It's cool, it's fun, and it's fun to find these crafting recipes across playing the game. My next point fits into this lovely Side content. This game, as I've said, has 4 main figures, then you fight the 5th guy, and then you go to the final boss area. So there's only really 6 major fights. However, I want to say there's like 30 or so locations in this game that you can go to, and there's just a lot of side content. There's so much else to do here, and there's so much you would be missing out on if you only did those 4 boss fights that it's crazy. Like the shotgun, that's side content. Being able to make the puppet and the entire puppet manor location with the Duke, that's all side content. You can get a chainsaw and night vision goggles, that's side content. There's a whole group of special weapons. I haven't found all of them. That's all side content. You don't find any of those in the main playthrough. All of the crafting things you can get, or you have to go out of your way to get. The only one I believe you can get through the main story is the pipe bomb. But even then, for that, you have to go out of your way to solve a puzzle to get it. It's great. Honestly, I really don't know what else to say to you to have this much to go. Yeah, I could focus on the main plot because they do break down the main plot locations you need to go to. If you hold down on the D-pad, it pops them up at any time. But there's so much to do in Westminster that it's like, well, I've got to see. Like, again, the brothel, which is clearly one of my favorite areas in the game, which again sounds crazy with no context, but just to bear with me. I would not have discovered that area if I wasn't just walking around. Even the Anomaly theme park, that's a side area. You don't have to go there. There's so much cool stuff that this developer put into this game, and it's not even mandatory, which I think is crazy. If I made a game with this many areas and stuff in it, yeah, I'm making half of that mandatory. I guess he didn't want the game to drag. However, there's just so much here. There's so much lore you can discover. There's a lot of puzzles that you just will not get if you're not going out of your way to find them. It's great. I really don't know what else to say about it. It's great. Once you've accepted how this game is and what its strengths are, I would say the side content is awesome. There's so much stuff I was doing. Literally on my first playthrough, I beat like 5 or 6 side areas, and then I said, I don't have to do this? And I went on and kept doing more. It wasn't like oh, now I'm going to blow them all off and pause and only focus on the main stuff. No, I was like, oh, well, let's keep going. What else is here? And then I get to my second playthrough and I find out I missed some areas even though I thought I went everywhere. There's just a lot of stuff like that here, and it's awesome. I really don't know what else to say. Speedrun ability, I think this game is a very interesting speedrun game. I don't know if it's popular enough, I don't know if people like it enough, but the fact that this game, again, has only 4 main bosses and then you can just go into the main boss, or like the end game, I think it's super interesting to imagine what speedruns of this look like, because this game has a lot of puzzles in it. I would say this game is based off of like RE and Condemned, which also had puzzles in between the combat and stuff, right? And these puzzles don't change. So I would love to see someone speedrun this game. Like, deadass, I think it would be super interesting to see what routes they go to, because some of the best stuff you can get in the game is in the side content, and that would make a lot of the main content faster. Or do you just think you're so good and you could do this so easily that you just do all of the main areas and then just keep it pushing? I think it's a super interesting game. It's just long enough where it wouldn't be too crazy. I think even when I did all of the side content, I think it was about 6 or 7 hours to complete the game. But I imagine if you only did the main path, it might be like 1 or 2, right? So I would love to see how a run of this game would look optimized. Overall, I think that this is a very good game. Would I recommend it to most people? No. I think you need to kind of be an artsy-fartsy, I can see past what is just basically right in front of me to like this game. Even when I looked up people talking about it, it was either people loved it or they thought it was the worst thing ever. Am I surprised by that? Not really. I mean, like I said, the combat, which is the main thing you're going to be doing here, kinda sucks. But I think everything else is really good, but you'd have to really dive in to find that stuff. Like, all of these side areas that I'm like, oh, these were awesome. That's not something you're just going to find if you already think this game sucks and the animation sucks, so there's no point. Reading the lore and seeing how all of these main figureheads of Westminster, like how they all interact with each other and how the director runs all of them and the doctor and the entire final area, which I think was great. This is stuff you're not going to reach if you're just like, the combat sucks, that's the main thing I'm going to be doing, this game sucks. But if you can look past that, I think you got a real gem on your hands. Would I pay full price for it? Maybe not. I paid full price because I was like, oh, well, given this is gonna have the condemned combat system, which it didn't. I'm probably gonna play this multiple times because I've always wanted to play Condemned Smile. And I think the full price is like $30, but I've heard it goes on sale usually for like $5 or $10. I'd recommend you pick it up around that time because a 6-hour game when you do all of the side content and stuff, I can't imagine is a super enticing offer, especially nowadays because I feel like games just have longer playtime than that on average. If you're the oddball guy of the group and you're like, oh, I could get into this, then yeah, I'd recommend it. But if you're like, okay, I need my next major thing, I need my next, I don't know, big fix, my next Crimson Desert, my next Resident Evil, my next Condemned, I don't think you're going to find that here, at least not in a way that fully satisfies you. If I had to give it a number, maybe like a 7, I want to say. Like I enjoyed it a fair bit more than I thought it would. Towards the end of the game, I was like, this is peak. I can't say it's one of the best things ever. I think it does just enough where most people would go, yeah, this is cool. Do I think it's going to forever hold your interest? No. I think what is here is neat. And given this was all made by, again, one guy from my understanding, that's super impressive. But that's been my thoughts. What do you guys think? As always, as long as you're respectful in the comments, I'm glad to discuss with you. And I've been M, and I am out.